On your dime still, of course.
Yes,
She's gonna help out some, though.
yeah, and, you know,
No,
I think so. And
know,
unless
I mean,
if there's changes.
Well, your daughter's been out,
are
right?
you gonna stay for the whole meeting or just leave within 2 years, 3 years? Where is it?
There's three,
Tulane.
That's
26.
Oh, that's why. Are you doing that? What day? That's New Orleans, right? Okay, I may not, I'm not gonna be there Friday. I did it today. I'm taking my daughter to Chicago to get her settled in her apartment,
Texas?
you know? We couldn't order any furniture till after she got on leave.
At least down there.
Okay, I got it.
Easy, cheap flight with Allegiant. Correct.
And I told you on that legislation and the cooperation agreement that we had to redo, but you guys need to sign, so I can scan and send it back to you. I think it should be.
Oh, my gosh.
Keep the billing going.
I am unreachable.
All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and start. Rob will get here when he gets here. All right, let's come to order. 6:30, 7:38. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, on roll call, since Rob is not here, I'm sure he'll be here momentarily. Mrs. Graves,
Here.
Dr. Lewis.
Here.
Mrs. Rankin.
Here.
Mr. Stelzer.
Here.
Mr. York.
Here.
All right, has everybody seen the minutes? We have 3 minutes this time to look over. We have the regular council minutes, we have the meeting minutes, and the minutes from the July the 12th. Any questions regarding those minutes? No questions? We all good? All right, I need a motion and a second to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Graves,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin,
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer,
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right, we'll accept those minutes. All right, moving on to communications. We have Chief Hines' report. Any questions? The chief is not here tonight. If you have any questions for the chief, you can call or email. The chief was here this morning, but the chief is out on a little bit of a bereavement leave. You know, he lost his dad here recently, and so he's been sort of on light duty. All right.
I had a question. So the
Sure.
Miami Road citations are up 175% this year?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, that might be, I mean, if you want to communicate that to, because I know there was another email from Rex, and it looks like they've slowed down a little bit, but, I mean, that's, as far as targeting policing, that's exactly what they asked for.
Right. Yep, no, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, the fire report. Any questions regarding the fire report? Assistant Fire Chief Copeland is here. If you, any questions? All right. What is next? John Scherpenberg's report. John, you got anything to add?
No, nothing at this time. Just let everybody know that the leaf season will be coming up this year. Prices have gone up dramatically for the because of COVID and trying to compete with McDonald's and all that.
Right.
Trying to get farther, getting people who have already been vaccinated. They really can't ask for guys that have been vaccinated. Told them they can just say, hey, look, we're looking for 3 people that have been vaccinated that would want to work. The prices went from $10 an hour up to $18.50 an hour. That's really quite a big difference.
Are we going to be allowed to ask them if they are vaccinated?
Would be our rule, wouldn't it?
There's different rules right now as far as what companies can do and what they can ask and what they can't ask. They're going through their HR department. Like I told them, we can't ask for the card, but all we can do is just on the honor basis, if we decide to go this route, whether or not they can ask and say, hey, if you've been vaccinated, you're able to work in Mariemont. If you're not vaccinated, you can't.
Right, so it's
Do you
with
have a
their.
thought on that,
Yeah, so it's with their HR department, since they're not employees of ours, right? They should be the ones that have those kind of conversations, and they can, ask that.
No, but I mean, can we ask before they come out here to work?
No, all we can say is we would like them to pay that. It's up to them to verify.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, the honor system, so you really don't know.
Yeah.
Right. You also have the ability, I mean, you could
Right.
require them to wear masks
Well, plus
regardless.
With the variant going around, they're waiting to see what's going on when schools start back. If this thing flares up, they may not have anybody come back to work.
Yeah, we might be in the same
do they-
situation we were in last year.
Yes,
But they work outside primarily,
yes.
and do they
But-
work in concert with our people?
Yes.
Okay,
But they also ride in the front seat of trucks with our guys.
Okay.
You know,
all right.
okay,
Just giving you a heads up.
yeah, okay.
Do we have options from Minutemen?
As far as,
I get, seasonal help, but not necessarily going through a temporary agency? I mean,
well, we've done seasonal help many years ago. Problem is if somebody gets workers' comp, gets hurt, then workers' comp comes back on us.
okay.
We've had that happen right before the season was almost ended when he got hurt his back. I guess he was on our books for, I don't know how many years. Mike London probably got him off the books, but
No,
he was on there for quite some time.
yeah.
So that's why we got rid of the part-time. The agency there, they take care of all of it.
Oh, that's, okay.
There's probably a liability
John.
Thanks,
issue
John.
with the machine, the shredder, and everything, like, yeah.
All right, Tax Administrator Dara's department report. Questions about that? You obviously can call her, can talk. Eli's not here. Questions about that?
Going out of order.
Can talk to her. Unless you've got any questions, anybody got any questions about it? No? All right. All right, Joe, you want to run through the Murray Path needed approval items?
Yeah. I had distributed a summary about where we stand on the Murray Path. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read through it. Basically, at this point in time, we're seeking to get the estimated bids for the water service that we've gathered along the way, which is going to be about $11,788 to get the 3 taps put in. And that's primarily just a permit fee from the Cincinnati Water Works, and this was kind of unexpected. I'm kind of shocked by the amount they're charging, but, you know, they're the only game in town. It's not like we can go after anybody else to try to get a permit. That's what they charge, and that's what it's going to be. We've also have a bid for what I'm calling the water pipes, and that's basically to get some PVC pipe and some valve boxes and some spigots along the way, so we can actually water all this landscaping that you know, we're going to put in. That bid is at a level of $10,045, which we believe to be very competitive, and so that's what we're seeking for approval on that bid. A bucket brigade or a water brigade, whatever you want to call it, is being recruited, who will actually go through and water these plants on a periodic basis. I just saw a list today of about 10 names on that water brigade. So that is coming along, and so they'll take the responsibility for making sure that they get the hose connected to these couplers and get some water on these plants as we move forward. I went through the process to actually prepare, and that was the last page of the analysis, about where do we stand right now on the amounts that we've actually paid and the amounts that we have been reimbursed for or that we have submitted reimbursements for, and then the estimated costs as we go further. And so you can kind of see, you know, where we think some of the stuff's going to wind up, including how much we're going to get from ODNR, which is our best guess about what they're going to give us a 75% reimbursement on. But there is no guarantee of that. You know, we're kind of, you know, submitting stuff. We will not know that until we actually submit it, after we pay it, to find out exactly what they're going to reimburse us for. But this sheet is the best guess we have at this point to kind of see where we're at. As you come down, the middle column on the sheet is the village net, and that's what we expect the village to incur after the reimbursement from ODNR. There's a gross column, there's a reimbursement column, and a net. And so that's, you know, it gives you a clear indication about, you know, so far you guys have approved the gross spending, and the net, we knew that there was the reimbursement amounts out there. And so what this is kind of give you a quick synopsis about where we think we are at this point in time. When you look at the net number, two-thirds of the way down the page, we're at about $152,000 is what we expect to be the net to the village. We have $175,000 between the $75,000 contribution from Columbia Township and $100,000 in private contributions we have raised. So as we stand here today, we may have $22,000 extra. But again, there's a big assumption in there about how much we're going to get from ODNR. And so one of the things I've added in this process is that, you know, what happens if we don't get the reimbursement levels that we you know, are projecting in the schedule. And so I'm asking for a backstop contribution to be authorized by the council of $15,000. As we sit here today, we don't think we're going to need it, but we've got a couple numbers in here that are, I'll call squishy at this point, including what we're going to pay for topsoil, and again, that reimbursement from ODNR. So again, this is a backstop contribution that we're asking for authorization on, just so, you know, when we get to the end to see, you know, if we're short, then we're going to be short.
And that would be a village contribution to the project.
Right.
Yes.
And, I mean, I think we've done a tremendous job in getting this thing built with very little cash from the village. And again, our partners over in Columbia Township have put $75,000 in on this thing, and we should probably be putting something in. And I think that's the conversation we've had for the past couple of years on it. And if we're, you know, at this point in time, just asking for a $15,000 contribution, that's more than fair. We have brought a lot of talent to the table to get this done in the village of Mariemont, so I think we've been good partners. But for us to say we're not putting anything in is probably not a realistic position to take.
Where are we with the back billing on the money that the village fronted on the design fees? And I'm talking about, like, you know, several years
I think you've
back.
signed those documents. I mean,
Where are we?
you've presented
But the
them.
last one I did, okay, I mean, we are playing catch-up with that back billing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I will send it, we sign tonight, that will go to DNR, in 2 weeks or something, they'll find out if we can pay a reimbursement or not based on the time frame.
Okay.
But that will bring us to 75% paid of the design fee,
Okay, yeah,
which is that maximum.
okay.
To summarize, we have billed the $22,000, and we have collected 16.8 off of it. There's an additional 13,000 that I think you've signed. Is that all done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I mean,
Yeah.
you're signing these things. I'm not seeing them, so, yeah, I'm not sure why I'm being asked this question. But again, I
Well,
mean,
you're
at the end
running
of.
the project, Joe, or it's in, you know.
Well, no, at the end of the day, I'm trying to keep the thing under
No,
control, but I don't
right.
see these things and I don't know what's going on sometimes.
Okay,
So,
okay.
again,
Well,
I distribute
We're
those
just sort of following up on that discussion, remember that we have.
I distribute this stuff to try to keep everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, when will we know from ODNR?
Thank you, Randy, you beat me to
We have to
it.
spend the money first. So, like, when we spend the money on the topsoil, then we'll submit that to ODNR to see if they're gonna get it. And we will spend the money on the topsoil probably the end of, well, actually, they're gonna start doing the grading in 2 weeks, I heard. So we'll start having some idea about the volume of topsoil that we need, but we won't know that volume of topsoil until, you know, they actually bring it in truck by truck and see exactly what they have. And at that point, they'll bill us, and then we can bill ODNR for the
So
reimbursement.
grading in a couple weeks, and then you've got the plant materials coming in September, is that correct?
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. We're working on right now.
But they've been purchased, have they not? I mean, I know that some of the trees, Matt said, have been purchased and set aside for us.
I think they've been set aside. I don't think
Okay.
we've cut any invoices yet. Again, I'm kind of out of this, so I don't know exactly where we're at in these payment pattern. I only get bits and pieces. One of the things I did ask today is to try to have a complete list of all the tasks that are remaining. When do we anticipate starting, and when do we anticipate? Because I don't know. Again, I try to play catch up on this stuff, and, you know, I think project management is something we need to improve on in this village. Because I have no idea sometimes what's going on with this stuff. So again, I'm just trying to present a picture here that there may be a need for a backstop.
Yes.
I don't think we'll get there. Hopefully, we'll have 22,000 left over, and we can figure out what else we can spend money on. But as I've sit here today, I can't assure that we have 22,000 extra.
Sure, of course, of course.
And Joe, what was the original estimate of any cash outlay from the village at the get-go before we started? Do you remember? I don't remember that
That's
number.
what you're going.
Again, I wasn't on council at that point,
Yeah,
but
you're
I
going
know
back.
there was conversations about putting something in on the plan. And I don't think we ever articulated exactly what it is. Because again, one of the things, if you look at the schedule, which is fascinating, we got a $268,000 grant from ODNR. We think we're only going to hit them for $217,000. We've been that efficient on the spending.
Yeah, I don't think there was a specific number. I think we're always waiting to see where did fundraising come in, and wherever we would need to fill the hole or the gap, we would.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was ever a set specific.
Originally, when this got started, and the village basically had to front a lot of that early design money.
I remember
to
that.
Choice
Choice
one.
one.
Or, yeah. We were fronting money then, not knowing, we might never see anything out of this kind of a thing. So, I mean, yeah, we, from the beginning, were willing to, front money, have it out there. The village was going to have a contribution, although admittedly, there was some controversy back then. There was a certain group of residents that said, well, I'm not really opposed to it as long as not one single nickel of village money. You probably remember that, that was going to get spent. And, we couldn't entirely make that promise, but as things are working out here, I mean, it's looking pretty good.
I mean, Bill, you mentioned that to me again last week, and I said, Bill, that type of comment is almost ludicrous, given the fact that we've got almost a $400,000 project here, and the village contribution might only be $26,000, which is 7%.
Right. Joe, I'm just.
I mean, so I
relaying
think
the
at some
comments.
point,
Yeah.
the idea about spending nothing,
No, it wasn't my idea.
okay, but
Yeah.
again, I
He was
think,
answering my question.
please,
I think
Yeah, I was
Bill
just-
was just,
okay.
I was just
clarifying.
passing on comments that were made
'Cause I
at the
didn't
time. I didn't say
remember-
they were my comments.
or I wasn't on council either when, the grant was approved or received or,
Well, given the
granted.
fact that our neighbor, Columbia Township, is, making a fairly healthy contribution here, I mean,
I think bottom line, Bill, this thing has been successful. I mean, there are people already out there using it constantly. We can see the pictures of people walking, taking their kids out. The other day I went through there, and there was a family out there teaching their son how to ride a bike on the path. It's a perfect project, and it has been successful. So if, at the end of the, and again, I'm only asking for the backstop authorization, that we might need it, but I think it's money been well spent.
all right,
If anyone
so
disagrees with that.
what do we need here, though? Just a show of hands to basically,
So show of hands on 3 items. One, the $11,788 Cincinnati Waterworks bill, the water service from Mariemont Landscaping, in an amount that will be $10,045, and then this concept of a backstop contribution of $15,000 towards the project.
Can I ask just a quick question? For the water tap, I see 2 in here, and I just want to make sure there are indeed 3, right?
Yes.
Chris, what the heck?
There was an email today trying to get that third
Okay.
estimate from the waterworks, but
Okay.
this is the problem we've had in this project, trying to deal with the waterworks, trying to deal with Duke, trying to deal with all the utilities. We're trying to get those wood poles out of there, and that's been an ongoing saga. So I mean, some of the stuff has not been easy.
Oh, I'm sure it hasn't.
And so the water taps, that's just so that we have water along the way to be able to
We
utilize.
have three water taps along the way, and so you literally have to tap the water line that's running through the street, and so this is just a permit to tap that line. And then the second bit is to run pipes along so we can actually have water valves at various locations, so we don't have to drag a hose several hundred feet.
It's called a hose bib. The faucet that you actually attach the hose to will
Got
be, dispersed along it.
And we did look at, some sort of sprinkler system, prohibitively expensive. We're not going that route yet. So we think this is the best solution to get water on the plants. And the good news is the plants are guaranteed as long as we water them. So,
So we just,
All right, so is everybody, do you all understand the amount of money, and are we all good with it?
I'm good with it.
Okay, just to-
Just take a vote. It's gonna be 3,900 for the waterworks, 8,000 for Raymond, and then another $15,000 for the
Backstop.
backstop, right?
I think the way to describe the backstop, we potentially won't collect that.
Right.
We had gross amounts that we have been approving in council
Right.
as we've been going along, and there's a chance we don't collect what we think we're going to collect.
Right.
And so it's like an indirect village contribution to the project.
Right.
Is the best way to describe it.
Just so everyone knows, and we'll do a vote on it real quick. That's all we need.
all right. Mrs. Graves?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
All right. All right. Okay, Randy, you want to give a brief explanation of your town crier contribution?
Well, I talked to Susie today, and I had sent this out. It's the idea of doing the departments and committees one at a time. Maybe not, maybe one at a time, maybe a couple of them. I mean, Chris and what he does, Tony what he does, service department, Chief Copeland probably would be best to do fire in October Fire Month. So the idea is pictures, bios of the guys, maybe probably a group shot would be better, maybe a picture of whatever's appropriate. I mean, we've talked in this body about how we don't communicate. This is our chance to communicate. For instance, when we do the tax department, can we do a chart of where our money comes from? I can't tell you where our money comes from. I'm starting to learn where our money comes from, but I'm out to these guys and say, can you rally your guys and get this information together? Susie, when she emailed me back, she said, I'm tired of just reprinting council notes. First, no one reads them.
Oh,
They're-
I think people
no
read
matter how
them.
much you want to say they don't, and I'm sorry, we're not communicating what we want to communicate, so.
Well, we can put a blurb in there that says, if you're interested in seeing the council notes, go here.
Well, and she does that, and I talked to her about that, and so I ran to town crier when we did that, and when we did that, back in the horse and buggy days, it wasn't online, it wasn't on CRC so you could watch it, so it was really almost required of us to
Right.
put these council meetings, it's simply no longer necessary. So if we want to communicate with the residents, we have to give it to them in consumable chunks.
Right.
And for instance, we approved our budget. Why not put the budget in next?
Yeah, why not?
If we want to do a rendering of Murray Path, the construction's going to start in September. If we can put that together this
Already got
week,
an article going in,
Yeah.
so That's already been prepared.
So this would be a series, though, that would be.
Susie didn't say there was.
Every month, there'd be a
A new
different.
department.
There's eight issues. So, we'd have to decide, what goes where and if it's timely. I think that maybe we do fire in October because it's fire month.
Right.
I'd like to do village administration as well. I mean, what does Tony do? What does Ed do? What does Chris do?
I'd like to start with our employees, since our council's gonna probably have a big, change.
Potential turnover.
Yeah.
Yeah,
turnover.
well, no, when I talk about village administration, that's separate of council.
Well, I
was
know,
gonna
but I
have
thought
that
you
separate.
put in committees and stuff like that. Or are you just talking about pool commission and planning commission, that type of committee?
Well, we could do that.
Okay.
It's up to you. I mean, I'm clearly open to
All I'm saying
suggestions.
is, I say village council, we wait till after later, rather than
I,
sooner.
yeah, I'm in no hurry to do village council.
But I've been wanting to do an article about Mr. Copeland for a while, because he's fourth generation firefighter, is that right?
See, that's the kind of stuff we need.
That's what people want to know.
People love that.
Yeah.
So,
So the deadline for the October town crier would be September 10th.
Roughly about a month from now.
Right.
So I
A
think,
month.
I think, I actually, Pete McBride, I reached out to him, Pete writes and he can put all this together and help it. So, but I think we need to help him do his job, get the pictures, get the bios of the guys, a history of the fire department, some of those facts, some of those, human interest stuff, I think it'd be perfect.
No, okay, I think it's a great idea. And you're just the man.
You gotta
to do
get
it.
your guys together,
Yeah,
get a picture.
Because next year's our 95th year on this village.
gosh, really? Yeah, that's impressive.
Bill, you've seen every day of it.
Yeah.
So I only got one question. I think we went through this process a little bit last year when there was articles being proposed or that were coming from council members. And there was this discussion about what type of process should be put in place before these things are actually, published, especially if they're supposed to be communications from the village. What are we talking about for this? What would the process be?
They're not communications from the village. That's not what they are. This is about our personnel and our village departments and our village committees. That's all they are.
Right, like,
We're not advocating anything. We're simply communicating who these people are and what they do.
But
feature of the month.
that's what we were doing last year and communicating some of the fiscal results, and it turned into a big editing session.
Yeah, but this,
Well, we have a budget. We have one version of the truth, so I don't see where there's going to be editing going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it makes you, we
I
can.
mean, as long as it's human interest stories, I don't think you need to have that process. If we start getting into trying to project numbers or analysis and things of that nature, there probably should be some review process on it.
I don't think that's what you were proposing, was it, Randy?
Not even close.
just,
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
I like it.
I like it, yeah, I like it.
October is fire month.
Or anti-fire month,
I don't-
please.
All right,
Fire
all right,
safety.
let's move on here. Joe has requested sort of an update from the building department. And we met with Mr. Vanstone today, Kelly and I did. And do you want to go ahead, or you want me to do it?
Well, I mean, basically what we did was talk about where we are and how much there really is to have to undertake. I mean, we're truly in a transitional phase right now. I spoke with Jerry Stoker from XPEX earlier today, and, he's had some good information or, good communications with Bob. I think where we're at right now in developing a process is good. Again, we know what our end goal is, it's just we're in this transition point of getting to it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the comments that we made this morning was, in order to train someone else to be our permanent zoning officer, Bob has to be completely up to snuff in order to do that training.
And he's not there yet.
And I think when we get to that point, that's when we say, okay, here we are, we're in a permanent situation, let's get these things in line, and come up with a logical progression of getting those things together. But I think we're not, in all honesty, I don't think we're quite there yet.
We're not quite there yet, and I do think, there's a lot of little sort of nuances and little details to this that probably need to be talked about and sort of, gone through. And I think part of our discussion today was essentially that possibly we should consider moving this, I think, into economic development and zoning. This is committee work. This is where this should be done.
Yeah.
Where we would sort of hammer out details as to, how Mr. Vanstone would be to proceed, what it's gonna look like, and then report back to us. The transition, let me make it clear, the transition is going well, and
Yes.
Vanstone is to be, I cannot thank and compliment him enough for the mantle that he has picked up to undertake this. But, we're really not quite in a position where we have a firmly defined zoning official role, I guess what we're trying to say
Well,
here.
and again, I know that we need to get there, and we will get there, But to your point, there are nuances that, a phone call can change the direction of the day, and you're like,
Derail the
oh,
day.
we have to do this, shoot, I didn't think about that. Especially in the historical area, we need to make sure we get that right.
Let me
That's why
let
I-
me just ask a quick question here. How long have we been dealing with this transition now? About 60 days?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, because, I
Bob,
mean,
you
if-
came on board as the interim zoning.
Well, I'm a volunteer. I want to make it very clear that there's no salary involved. I'm doing it on a volunteer basis to make sure people can get permits. But when I've had total access to everything has been 2 weeks. The process started before then. You're right, Joe.
Okay, so then when, again, give me some idea about the timeline. When do we think this stuff will be completed? Are we talking about 2 months, 2 years?
Well, that is in part, I think, what we would want to work out in committee. I don't think we work that out here tonight. I don't have an answer for that. I don't think Bob has an answer for that. I mean, these are details to be discussed. This is, Joe, this job is really a little bit more involved, a little bit more complex than was originally anticipated when we undertook to reorganize the building department.
Right. Agreed.
So I don't see that we can hurry this. I don't even see the need to hurry it. He is
Rather do it
basically.
once and
he is
right rather
fulfilling
than
the
quick
role
and
and the
not.
function of the building department. People are coming in, making application for permits. He has to make a determination as to whether or not there's a zoning issue before it's passed off to XPEX, and that is happening.
But to your point, I think putting it in the zoning committee is a wise move.
Any other thoughts? Marcy?
Well, I would just, I mean, I know Joe was involved in this whole organizational restructure, and he's on planning. I sat in on a couple meetings. Randy's new. I would just ask Kelly that maybe you sit in on the
Absolutely.
meetings, because you are much more
Absolutely.
up to speed on this than I am.
Happy to help.
I would also, I mean, I don't know if this is something for the finance committee, but I would like to keep track of the results. And, this was supposed to be a money-saving move for the village. So I don't know if that goes into finance committee or where, but I would like to keep track of where we were last year and our expenses and how this is netting out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Again, that's sort of a nuance as to how we should have a tracking mechanism. Obviously, we do want to know, where we are, how this financially is working out. That would be an aspect. What's
but
that
we
going to look
never
like?
had
How are
any
we going to do
projections
that?
in the first place of how that would go. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of, was kind of winging it.
Right.
Oh, that's a true statement. And then with Bob graciously volunteering, how do you assign a dollar amount to that?
Right,
Because it's immeasurable.
exactly.
So if I may, the goal is to have a permanent zoning officer.
Yes.
Yes.
And is there a job description for that zoning officer that's been developed?
There's a basic,
There's an
Job
there's
description,
an
but-
outline.
yes.
Again, more of the nuance that would be worked out.
Committee work,
in the
right,
committee,
right.
To have a more clearly defined role of what that would be.
And that zoning officer, this whole inspections of the rental properties, that would fall under their,
No, the inspections of
That's
the
something
rental
different.
property, no, that is a separate issue, and we're in discussions with XPEX about that.
Yes.
XPEX essentially would be assuming or taking over that
oh,
role.
they offer that.
They
Okay.
offered that,
Yes.
yes.
Awesome.
And we've
Yes.
That's
spoken with them,
terrific.
we've definitively asked them to do that.
There's other issues with the rental inspection program. Number one, what do we charge for that process? Now, are we charging enough? And we probably aren't, especially if we're going to go to a third party
We
doing it.
charge the landlords, right?
We charge the landlord.
Right.
And the other issue with the rental inspection program, I'm told there's 450 rental units in Mariemont, and we are way behind. I mean,
Sure.
we did, a minimal amount of rental inspections for the last 3 years, based upon the numbers I saw, to the extent I think it was maybe, a handful of rental inspections were done. So we are way behind on that process, and it had actually, popped up on an issue we had on, that kind of reared its ugly head in the last 12 months. So we need to get that rental inspection program in place, and that's the way to protect that historic
And,
district more
yeah.
than anything
So,
else.
does this zoning officer then manage XPEX? Is that
There were some conversations about, can we utilize some of the existing people at the building office for the rental inspection program, but I guess that didn't work out.
No, that's
Okay,
why
so
we
now
decided to
I
go with
guess-
an objective
and-
third party.
And part of the reason why I wanted to discuss this tonight, because we haven't received a lot of communication about what's going on with the building office. And I think council should. We should understand what's going on as we go through this transition process. If you want to put this in the Economic Development Committee, that's fine, because hopefully we'll get a little bit more information than I've gotten for the last 60 days on this transition.
Sure.
And answers to some of my questions about when can we start the rental inspection program? Because again, some of this other stuff you're talking about, if we can figure out the right people, we can start that rental inspection program. We can go on parallel paths.
Well, Joe, we're looking to start the rental inspection thing, I mean, almost as soon as, conceivably possible.
And that's
Yeah.
where my questions come.
Okay.
But again, I had sent some emails, in the last 30 days asking these
All right.
questions, and I got nothing back.
Well, we were still kind of going back and forth with XPEX to get that essentially worked out. But I do believe that we are essentially there with them now, that they are
They
on the cusp of
that
starting those
is
inspections.
right. I talked to
being able
Jerry
to start
about
those inspections.
4:30 this afternoon.
Then, Bob, you got a comment?
Yeah, I heard a lot of discussion, maybe this communication went between council members, but I never saw any of it, so I never had the opportunity to respond, okay?
Yeah.
So let's be,
No, and-
what I would hope to do is through Marcy's committee, is to address all of these issues and it'll probably take a couple committee meetings because there'll be questions. I'll have to do some work to get the answers to that.
Bob, and I sent those emails to the mayor and to Kelly, because they were the two that were the fronts on this thing. And so again, if you wanted to see them, I could send them to you.
I'm just saying, when you say you heard nothing from the building department, it sounds like.
No, I hadn't heard nothing in response to my emails.
I want to make it clear that if I'd gotten a request, I would have made an attempt to respond.
Well, and there was a lot of chaos going on in the building department because, Eileen was gonna go and then Eileen was gonna stay and then she was gonna go. I mean, so there's just, it's been in a state of chaos. So, it takes a while to work your way out of that.
Yes.
Hopefully, we're stabilizing that now, and, there's still a few parts of the job I still have to learn better, and I have to get up on that. But let me just give example, because you're talking about permits and inspections. In the past 2 weeks, I've had to go to 2 sites. One was at the Waldorf School, where they were putting in the wrong kind of windows that ARB would not approve of, in my opinion. And they're seeking that approval now. And another one just happened in my neighborhood. A house had been sold. I walked into the site and they demolished almost the entire, the house, inside of the house. Plumbing was cut up and electrical laying everywhere. They didn't do a permit of any kind. And that takes a lot of time.
Right, because you're
I'm just
reacting.
saying that there's a,
So let me ask you this quick question, Bob, because one of the things, I'd ask for a monthly report, just so we can kind of keep track of where we stand as far as how many permits have been pulled, any type of permits, whether it's, the types of things you're talking about, or if it's others. And then that key column to me was that open permits column. How many do we have open right now? And are we staying on top of the permits that we've had come in? And you and I had a walk and talk probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and you said you were kind of keeping up at that point.
well, if you say open permits, there are a whole bunch of open permits because the inspections during COVID weren't done. People didn't call, some inspections were made, some were not made. XPEC is trying to go back through all those and get those inspections done, and we need to follow up on that. But I'm just saying, it's easy to, in my opinion, to say the building department wasn't keeping up on it, but I think there was a lot of COVID issues.
Yeah.
People were working off-site, and there was a lot of things that just weren't being passed, and it's a tough situation. And I think we're trying to get on top of it, and the answer is, I don't know exactly how long it'll take me, because honestly, I committed to volunteer 4 hours a week. And so I'm there basically from 8:30 to 12:30 most days. And that is not enough time to do everything that is required. And I've also heard the perception from the council, you could hire someone off the street to do this. And I don't think you could, because just doing the zoning part isn't trivial. Sometimes the Cages maps aren't right, so you have to go out to a site and measure with setbacks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's people that try and, let's say, squeeze the system a little bit, and you have to deal with that.
So again, if we're going to put this into committee, one of the deliverables I'd like to see is some sort of reporting, so we know where we stand.
Sure.
How much of a backlog we have.
Sure.
And that type of stuff. Because again, that's critical to understand where we're at right now. And if we want to look at expenses, we can do that also.
And just a final comment too, what Bob is talking about, you know, finishing out some of these inspections, we're talking about the final inspection, that closes out
Put
the
it to bed.
permit.
Yeah.
We're not talking about, you know, an intermittent inspection, you know, as the work is proceeding. A lot of the jobs are finished, but they just didn't call for that final inspection because of COVID or other.
Again, I've heard some anecdotal evidence from residents about delays in getting paperwork done. And again, I'm not sure what the problem was, but I'm just trying to figure out, do we have a problem or not? And if we're behind, if we need resources to get caught up, let's figure out how to get it done.
Okay.
I mean, my questions are, do we have a problem, and how are we addressing the problem?
Well,
Well,
yeah.
Well, I guess, like, what are you gonna, of course you're gonna have problems when you're going through it, when you've totally redesigned a system. I mean, it's, it's gonna take
They're
some
called
time.
growing pains.
It's gonna take, I mean, you can't just make a recommendation and then say, well, why don't we have results?
No,
Like,
I'm
immediately.
asking for some information about project management, and to me, the project is this transition to the building office. Where do we stand right now? And what needs to be done? And when can we anticipate it to be completed? It's pretty simple things of that nature. I don't think I'm being unrealistic in asking for those types of things, so we as council people know what's going on there.
I think once it goes into committee and they start to have discussions in there and review the issues that we're sort of talking about here, we'll have better answers.
I'm fine with that, as long as we can start making some progress on that front.
Well, we are making progress.
No, I'm saying on the reporting.
Yeah,
So
okay.
so the communication is coming to the council members.
All right, okay. Again, thank you, Mr. Vanstone, to step into this role. All right.
Our gratitude cannot be overstated.
All right, moving on
Very profound to say, Bob keeps telling me no.
quickly.
I had no idea how many portlets there were all over Mariemont. I mean, there's just things you can't imagine that are going on that you don't know are going on.
We know, and we're working to get some of those portalettes out of there, I can tell you. All right, moving on. Mr. Lemon has sent us a letter regarding the village administrator. You've all seen that. Any questions? All right, we had a communication from,
So are we going to talk about
We
this
are.
now, or we're going to talk about it later?
Just later.
Later?
Talk about
Okay.
later. We had a communication from Joy Pearson. This is the HUD, this is the changes that were needed. Apparently, they're in the original agreement or something. You can probably help me out with this. There was
just changes that were sent to her at last minute, so
That
I
we're gonna
got
make.
those.
Did we make the changes, or did they
No,
make the changes? HUD made the
Oh,
changes. So,
HUD
but
made
I'm sorry, didn't they start the contract?
yes.
They just missed some stuff.
Yeah, they missed some stuff.
I think what happens when we went to HUD made some changes to it. And so my question is, Ed, did you get a chance to look at the changes?
I did not look at the changes, no, I didn't.
Sorry, here, I got them here, if you want to look at them during the meeting.
It's in red here.
I sent
I mean, I didn't see anything,
All messed
I-
up. You know what I started doing? This is what I did.
I didn't see anything in there that was too alarming, but I'll defer to Ed on this one.
As soon as I get it, I don't even, I look at, I go through it.
Joni had given
deep
it
in
to
it.
some of us, the revised one, with because you had the red line one, so I just gave them the red line one so we could see where the changes are.
I see a lot of red.
Well, in one section.
And then they're all front and back like
It's really just on one
So
page.
you voted on
I
that?
don't know if I'm coming here.
Yeah, it's, we have the new resolution, we're
It
going to
took
be
me a
voting
year
on
to
it later.
figure out.
Yeah, so he has a chance to read it a little bit, so at least he's got the changes.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. All right. Permission to address council. Mr. Gaines? Say? Okay, all right, well, this is your
That's a
chance.
first.
It's all right, it's all right. All right, not anybody wishing to address council? Motion to pay the bills. Any question regarding the bills?
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. No,
I do want to bring up one thing. There was some emails that were exchanged this past week about how to approve bills.
yes.
And so I was just wondering who's going to take care of trying to develop that policy and communicate it to the village employees and everybody else about what the policy is going to be on a go-forward basis? Because I think there has been some confusion in the past about the procedures needed to actually get approval for some of these items.
Okay, you're talking about a bill that goes over the $5,000 limit, is that what
Yeah.
you're referring to?
Yep.
Is that what you?
So
Um,
Yeah, that was the email I asked for Ed, and Ed gave the clarity back.
Yeah.
So we were just trying to say, how can we maybe
And there-
put that into? a
Okay, there
document?
has been some back and forth here. I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, where are we on it then?
Well, what Joe's asking is, Ed's provided the clarity, so now how do we document that and incorporate that so that everyone here can know how, and including employees know?
Yeah.
If you, I'm happy to take a first cut at it.
Okay.
If you want to.
Because I think the one thing we have to have clarity on is the normal expenses, something like payroll.
Right.
No, we don't have to go through that.
Duke
But
Energy
just
bills.
let's make sure that we're
Trash.
very crystal clear about what is in that category and that other things don't fall into it.
Yep, agree,
All right, so you're going to take the lead on that?
first cut.
Okay, very good.
Joe, did you read all these changes?
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Anything earth-shattering in them?
I didn't see anything that jumped out at
Your
me. I mean,
perspective? What I'll do is,
the only question I had, I'm not sure that ESG thing that they're adding on it, that I don't, and what they're actually saying is that they want us to use their agency as the primary source for ESG funds, but I'm not aware we would get it from anywhere else at this point in time.
I'm not either.
So, and the other changes don't seem to be that, but again, I'll defer to you. I'm not a contract reader.
All right, so no other questions on the bills? I need a motion and a second to pay the bills.
So moved.
Second?
Second. Mr. Bartlett,
Aye.
thank you for showing up. Mrs. Graves,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
I was in Milwaukee this morning. I drove all the way here. It's been crazy.
Mrs. Rankin,
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer,
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right, we'll pay some bills. All right, I don't believe no reports. No reports. All right, moving on to miscellaneous then. Village offices will be closed in observance of Labor Day, September the 6th. The Whiskey Creek Trail repair. Chris, Kelly, you all.
We
who
went
took a-
down.
Somebody took a walk down there.
Yes, John and Chris and I.
Yeah.
Kind of a twofold issue. I mean, the primary purpose initially was to look at that trail, where the trail has eroded away. A tree has actually fallen over and taken all the earth that's part of the
That
trail.
was part of the trail.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so to fix that is quite a task. So we kind of talked about being able to cut up some trees and maybe shore it up and maybe even divert the trail. But it definitely has to be stabilized. I mean, it literally is no longer there. Or if it's 10 feet lower than it used to be. So it's impassable. So,
Well, so John, then, I mean, you've been down there. Have you been down there to take a look at it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, what are our options here, other than, say, just cutting the wood up and getting that, out of the
Well,
way?
that's what we're looking into now. I talked to somebody from another department, and they said there's a company, Indian Hill just used out of Kentucky, that redid the creek bed over at near,
you said Weller Creek?
Weller,
Yeah.
over in that area. So I'm gonna try to get a hold of Indian Hill, find out who this company is. They're federally regulated, working with Corps of Engineers, take care of all the permits. And they have certain equipment that are allowed to have down in a creek bed.
To do the work.
So ours is tributary to Little Miami.
Right.
So I don't know if it'll qualify or not, but that's what we want to look at. That's just not the only tree that's down blocked.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
It took out the trail,
Mhm.
and the one where the banister was, that's still down in there. We cut the wood and make the trail, get through the trail.
Right.
There's several other trees that are still down blocking the way, and then down by my shop, there's a tree that went over back where the pipes go underneath the road, those
Yeah.
all fall. So that's another major issue.
So I mean, how involved does the Corps have to be in this? Is there a permitting
Well,
process
yes.
that we would have to see
Like we
too?
did
And-
last time, so, we got the permit after the fact.
Yeah, I know we got out of step there a little bit.
So, I'm gonna check with Indiana this week, see if I can't talk to them, who they had, see if we can get in contact with those people. Try to get them to come out, look at it, see if it's something they can do, you know, going over what they did with the Lower Creek
Yeah.
project. Everybody said they did a good job.
Good job. Okay, but they're a private company. I mean, does the Corps pay for this, or we pay for this?
I don't know.
Are there grants for this?
What we wanna try to find out, what the steps they took and what they did to get this all taken care of.
Do you know, Chris?
There are some riparian grants for items like this.
Uh-huh.
I think the first hurdle is getting the Army Corps permit started. So if there's anything we do below the ordinary high water mark, it's gonna involve the Corps.
Do they come out and have to look at it themselves? I mean, how do they know what we're
Yes.
submitting?
Yeah, they'll come out and look at it. Once you submit something, they'll come out and
Come out, yeah,
most of the time.
okay.
So
So,
like I said, if we can get this company that was out of Kentucky or whatever, see what their suggestions are and go from there.
right.
See what they can do.
Okay, well, sounds like we're,
And this Bill Pittman gentleman, he's with Sims Township. Okay,
He's the one that brought up that they had just finished that project.
okay, thanks.
So I probably have more experience down there than a lot of people in Whiskey Creek, and I've lived through the last fiasco we had down there, including being threatened with federal prosecution. And so there's a lot of questions we probably need to answer before we move forward with anything down there. And some of this involves, and I'm assuming we want to try to get these paths reopened through there.
oh, yeah.
I don't think there's any argument on that. I think, again, there's things that people like to have in Mariemont, extra amenities.
Yeah.
But before we move forward, I think based upon what we heard the last time, we should probably address a couple questions. Number one is, what's considered a nature preserve down there and what isn't? And what are the restrictions for path development in nature preserves? Because we seem to hear a lot of different opinions on what was allowed to be done, what wasn't allowed to be done, but we should probably know that before we move forward. Also, what areas down there are considered to be historically significant? And what are the restrictions for path development in those areas? And again, we heard a lot of stories one way or the other, which I think, could be classified as opinion and not fact, based upon everything I heard in the last go-around on this. What assurances, and again, if we're going to do this without using volunteers, because the last time we did it with volunteers, and again, those volunteers were subject to, being threatened with criminal and civil issues. Also, we're subject to retaliation by, the former mayor. We should somehow say, hey, this ain't gonna happen again if we recruit volunteers to do this. And so, again, it was not a nice situation last time. If we're gonna recruit people to do this, which I think I can do again, but again, there has to be some assurance that this isn't gonna go the route that it went last time. What role does the Parks Advisory Board have in this process? I don't think that's ever been decided one way or the other. They suddenly popped up at the end and, they weren't there at the beginning, and I never did figure out what was necessary, what wasn't. What does our insurance policies create any restrictions regarding trail development in this area? Because that's another thing we heard in the past. Oh, there's all these insurance issues with what's going on down there. We probably need to do a legal survey of the area so we know what is our property and what is somebody else's property. Because I think in some cases we may have not been respecting that as well as we should have. So if we're going to go ahead and try to do this, let's make sure we cover those bases and not repeat the problems we had in the past down there.
I think the first thing, though, is probably get the Corps out there, is it not?
Well, yeah,
I mean, I don't know that we can do-
Done this before, I mean, they're federally certified
Yeah.
Right.
on all this, and they can kind of guide us which way to go first. Go that way.
Yeah, I mean, these are all good considerations, but I mean, I don't think, you can't.
But so I guess there's two parts for the Army Corps though, right? One is clearing out the stuff, right, John? I mean, clearing it all out. And then there's building, which is the second part. And I think the building part is where Joe's
Yeah.
questions need to be addressed. So there's two steps.
Uh-huh.
Clear it out, and then what do we build? And I'm assuming Army Corps would also be part of whatever we choose to build, so.
Well, I'm sure they would, yeah, I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, I
they
mean,
would
it's
have-
So-
right,
so-
it's right at the creek. This part of the trail actually is the second crossing of the creek. which is now no crossing of the creek.
You know, it would be, A, what could you build, what would they allow, and then how, you know.
Yeah, but then we have to go address,
Yeah.
when we get to the
address-
build part.
I've actually got pictures of the whole area, and again, we've got erosion issues down there, we've got trees falling that are creating dams, and we have a massive dam at the end of the creek that could potentially block the storm pipe going underneath the driveway going to Balcomatic. And that's been there for several years, and we need to figure
That
out.
is a monster clog down there.
It is, but again, that thing, if it gets completely jammed up, I still don't know how water's getting through that. I could probably show you the pictures that I've got on the computer. But I mean, it is bad and getting worse. And sooner or later, I think what's gonna happen is that thing's gonna get completely blocked, and then the water's gonna be flooding all the way back up, and again, may impact these historical areas that, you know, we were told we need to protect.
Yeah, it's true, could put it all underwater, although I think they probably go underwater during a heavy rain anyway, but.
It's not only going underwater, but it soaks it and can bring, you know,
Yeah.
things up from the ground. So again, this is not a simple solution. If it was, I would have proposed, hey, let's just, you know, move the trail, you know, 5 feet one way and try to figure. But that contour down there is not very good. The topography is, in the area that we're talking about, there may not be another pass through that area. We may have to go up the hill and come back down again.
Yeah.
But there's
That's-
these other issues that are out there that we need to address before I think we move forward on trying to put a path through there, including that survey. I think that's absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, sounds like we got a plan. All right, update status on filling the village administrator role.
I'm happy to cover that.
Can I just ask one quick question going back? How much would that survey cost? Or how do you go about doing that survey? Does the Army Corps of Engineers do it?
No, you
Does the village
basically-
pay for it?
No, you hire a surveyor, you know, similar to if you're gonna buy a house and you wanna say, okay, I wanna know what my property lines are, you hire a surveyor who comes out and
And about how
determines.
much does that cost on a general basis?
If you're doing the whole creek, it could get pretty expensive. If you're doing areas that we think are questionable, then it may not be. $3,000 to $5,000 if we just limit it to the areas that we think, you know, we got problems. We can look at a thing called CAGES, which is the Hamilton County.
I know, I'm familiar.
Okay, so that gives you some rough estimations of where things go, and you can kind of change the view to see the aerial to try to figure out where you're at. And so if we're only going to talk about a couple areas, it might be $3,000 to $5,000
Yeah.
to do a survey.
But didn't you just say sometimes CAGES is unreliable?
We found specific when it's off by feet, it's not off by, and so I think cages could determine where you might be close. You know, when I say it's off.
Narrow it down, as you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
narrow it down to say maybe we need to do survey here.
Right. And one of the things that happened in the past,
Wasn't even aware there's a problem down there.
Where?
In Wooshee Creek.
Oh, yeah,
I wasn't even aware.
one of the things that's happened in the past year is the developer has torn down the car repair place in Fairfax, and he had surveying flags on trees and stuff down there, whether, how accurate it was or wasn't, but we never got the results of that to see exactly where he was establishing the lot lines for that lot, but it's something we should probably think about doing before we, you know, try to take this back on again.
Yeah, there were a few flags down there when we,
Well, I know just from.
by the cinder blocks.
The end of our property goes over the creek, back past the dam, by the pool area.
Yeah.
And then off of,
I would tend to agree with you on that one. It's that middle section that I've got concerns with.
Yeah.
because when the Corps of Engineers sold, that's when back when the old village, they used to dump down there. That's when they told them they had to clean up that hillside. back
Right. And Marcy, what they'll do is they'll basically, on that survey, we'll look at the last conveyance document and try to plot those, what are called meets and bounds, to basically describe that lot. And they'll try to put that, you know, they'll mark that physically on the ground based upon where they think it is. And again, it's not hyper accurate because sometimes they can't figure out exactly where the reference points are, but at least gives you some idea about where your lot lines are.
Okay, thank you.
All right, backing up, I skipped one here. We want to refer to the safety committee. Obviously, this parking thing over there on Murray. Unfortunately, the chief is not here tonight, but this seems to be a sort of a contentious kind of a situation over there. This was a space that was created on Murray, just east, I guess, of Homewood. Yeah, Homewood. And there is a fire hydrant there, and this space has sort of been declared a parking place, then it's been Xed out as a parking place. Neighbors, some neighbors want it there because there's a shortage of parking. We need,
So, I-
we
yeah, I
need
had-
some definitive work here as to,
I had like an email conversation back with Chief. I didn't realize his father passed away, but I'll wait to connect with him. He says there's pretty clear concrete laws tied to this, so I'm not sure.
distancing the space from the hydrant, yes, but the space could be moved and comply with that distance. The question is, some of the residents there think it creates a blind spot, looking down Murray.
Yeah.
As you're trying to make the left onto Murray, you can't see. I'm not going to make a comment on that, but that's something that
So
we
people
should
wanted it,
decide.
they put it in place, now people don't want it.
Yes, and actually, I think it's actually gone back and forth, maybe 2 or 3 times. Yeah. So,
So could you just put like a mirror up somewhere so they could look down?
I'm
well,
happy to take that.
some determination has to,
Mud.
There you go.
just, is there a blind spot?
I am
Well, I will
happy to
always
take a look.
err on the side of safety.
Oh, of course.
We do
It's
have more
one spot?
spots now, with that was probably before they put in the extra spots with the bike path.
I don't, John, do you know when that thing was first put in over there, that spot? Was it prior to basically doing some of those diagonal spots into?
Yeah, I remember now when.
Well, after we made it one way, after the village made that
One way.
that became an issue.
Okay.
And then we did a yellow curb on Homewood on both sides.
Uh-huh.
To give, because they have to park within, they can't park within 25 feet of the intersection on Homewood.
Okay.
So where the parking stall is 10 foot from that one section of the fire hydrant, which is what the law says.
Yes. Right.
So then we had put it in there, and I guess there was a guy that worked there that had a construction vehicle making the obstruction through there.
Right.
And then that's when that all came about, and
Right.
the council decided to make it no parking there.
Okay.
And once we were doing the path and everything like that, that guy apparently had moved, and that's why they said, hey, why not open that back up to parking again? The ones who complained about it now want it back open, so we opened it back up. Somebody else now wants it.
Well, I mean, maybe it could be designated just for compact cars. We see those around.
I mean, we
Oh, that's a great idea.
on the intersection,
No big trucks.
it's over 25 feet, I don't think it'd be an issue.
But it's a committee thing. I mean, obviously, you just,
I can meet with you and show you.
yeah. All right, so we're going to put that into your committee. All right, updating the status for filling the village administrator role.
Again, I'm happy to cover that if you want. Since you and I have been working on
I
it.
bet you are. I bet you are. All right, proceed.
Okay.
Lead off.
Yeah, lead off, huh? So this is all going back to, again, there's a committee report that council accepted back on April 16th, where we said the village administrator role already exists in Mariemont's code book, so no legislation is required to create this role. The role is appointed by the mayor with approval of council, and if council accepts this recommendation, the next step will be to start the search process. So Bill and I worked on a write-up of the job description. We posted it on OML, Ohio Municipal League, and Center for Local Government. It was posted for 45 days, and we got 14 candidates applied by the end of June 30th. Bill and I went through all the applications. We decided to interview 7 of them, and the last interview was on July 23rd. And so we're narrowing that down for a second round of interviews, still discussing exactly how many to have in the second round of interviews. One of the things I think what might be helpful is Randy came to me, and he was interested in potentially participating in this as well. And I'm totally fine with that. I think it would actually be good to have 3 people there.
Another set of eyes, sure.
Yeah, another set of
Yeah.
eyes, another set of eyes. Because, again, in all honesty, I mean, Bill and I don't always see, it's hard to believe, I know, but we don't always see eye to eye on things. So, but they're good conversations.
They're good conversations. Right, right.
So anyway, I think it would be good. I think it would be good to have a third person. Randy's had experience interviewing people and hiring people before, and so I think it would be good to include him just for the second round now as we go down and to the second round of people that we're going to interview for this thing.
Okay.
So you have how many people that you've chosen for a
Well,
second round?
Bill had said 2. I think there's a third one I would like to include, and especially if we're going to have Randy come in, I'd like to have, there's just one more person, so I would have
Okay.
3 people.
So Randy would be in on the second interview for these 3 that have already been interviewed once.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I have responded back to the 4, I copied you.
Yeah,
on
I
that.
saw it. I saw
So I
it.
responded back to the other 4 and let them know, thank them for their time and effort and things like that. And just told them it wasn't a right fit for us, given this is our first village administrator that we're gonna have. So and we wanted to make sure we have the right skills for that role.
Cool.
And some of those skills that were discussed prior to sort of the interviewing process, we sort of outlined three main areas, topics of interest that we would, want to emphasize. One of them being the ability of this administrator to do financial, reporting, because, I think we are woefully sort of, behind in terms of how we do our financial reporting or accounting in this village, in terms of being able to identify, where we are at any given moment financially in the village. Where are we on or off our budget by department? What is the revenue stream into the village, from what areas, as I think Randy was just saying, he has no idea where the money comes from. I think some people think it comes from trees in the backyard. As we went through this process of interviewing, well, let me mention the other two. One was the ability of the administrator to acquire grants, and the third was the
Economic development.
economic development, yes. It was my impression as we continued through this interviewing process that some of the answers that we were getting were not, I didn't find them to be sufficient in terms of their ability to, relate to me, how they were going to do this financial account, what would it look like? Some of them basically had pie charts, bar charts, and graphs, and things like that, but that's not really what I was asking or looking for. I was looking for trend analysis, the ability to sort of spot what direction are we going off in, is it good, is it bad, so on and so forth. So, again, Rob and I probably disagree on this a little bit, but again, I think that is a major issue with what we're doing here. As I have expressed, I think one of the biggest challenges facing this village is our fiscal position, where we are, what are we doing? My God, we've already, for the next 2022 budget, we're projecting a $200,000 deficit. And it seems to me, as you pointed out, in the last 5 years, we've overspent here by, what is it, 1.1 million?
1.15 million from
Okay,
2019,
1.15,
from
yeah.
2015 to 2019.
Whatever, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
How does this happen? Why do we, year after year, why are we in this position? What's going on here? And I want to know from a financial reporting point of view, how to fix it. So I think.
Cut expenses and raise revenues.
Well, that's if only it were that simple.
101.
I think that, personally, I believe that we are interviewing for the wrong position here. What we need is a fiscal officer, because that is the main area of concern for the village. So, I know you're shaking your head, you disagree, but listen, this is a major commitment that you would be committing this village to in this administrator. And like I said, are we getting the best value out of this position by doing this? And another sort of quick aside here, both Tony and Eli have sort of signaled to us that they want to, leave their position in the village, kind of a thing. So I don't know what the exact time frame is, but we're going to find ourselves in a position of having to have a fiscal officer or somebody that's going to pick up that kind of slack. So I am merely suggesting here, I'm not saying that let's just totally scrap the idea of this administrator. I'm not saying that. I'm saying let's interview some fiscal officers to see what they have to say, how they do it.
We did. The gentleman from the city of Cincinnati, he did that for like 10 years for the city of Cincinnati.
Yeah,
And he didn't give you an answer that you liked either. I think part of the problem, Bill, is I don't think we gave him we didn't explain to them exactly what it is we want. And I think, again, having somebody like Randy there will help with that. Again, one of the people who I want to reintroduce, every place where he's been a village administrator or city manager, their cash balance has increased year over year. I think this guy knows how to do that
You're
kind of
talking about
stuff.
the guy from Pickering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
Be a little careful talking about specific candidates right now, because that's exactly.
Well, I'm not saying names.
Type stuff. I know you're not, but
I'm just saying one gentleman.
it doesn't
Good
take
call,
a Rhodes
good
Scholar
call.
to figure out who the former guy from Pickle was.
Well, I didn't
Yeah.
see Pickerington.
That gentleman, as good as it all sounded, again, this is not taking into consideration the differences between communities. Mariemont is an extremely unique community with very precise, unique problems. And what worked in Pickerington is not necessarily going to work here. And to your point, Rob, why don't we define in more detail,
Sure.
in
do it.
great detail, in fact, I tried to outline some of this for Joe here not that long ago. Let's define that, what we're really looking for financially in terms of our reporting. Run that past a fiscal officer to get their spin on it.
I'm sorry, we voted to go do this. I don't want to sit there and say, now we're going to go change this, because this was a.
We're not necessarily changing it. We're not changing it. You're right, Rob, but new information has come our way.
No,
My
Bill.
understanding, though, was that Kelly said it doesn't hurt to look.
I
mean,
believe
that-
she did at the vote.
Again, this is what was voted on by council. We
Yes.
voted to go ahead and
So
search
why
for
do
the
we have
village
to,
administrator.
okay, why do we have to handcuff ourselves into that if we want to run down and explore a different option here? And I'm not saying we may not do that. I'm simply saying let's entertain the possibility of other options.
So what else is the fiscal officer going to do? Because again,
Let's work that out.
A typical fiscal officer does a lot of the things that Joni does. We have the job description for Fairfax. It does all the payroll, it does the clerk, all those other kind of things. And we've had this conversation. I mean, Joni does these things, she does them really well. I don't know what we have Joni do then, if you bring in a fiscal officer who does the things that Joni does. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, let's talk about that, though. I mean, because long-term, to your point, when we do need to have a fiscal officer, how do we approach that? I mean, it's going to come soon, it's going to sneak up on us really quick. So would we
Interview for one.
Interview
You would
for a
interview
full-time
with-
fiscal officer.
With the full job responsibilities like somebody like Fairfax has, it's all written up for us. You pointed out where that was, right? And so there's a full job description that lays out, here's the things that the fiscal officer would do.
And do we have that in the budget for a particular year?
If we're waiting until Joni retires to fill that role, then we've had this conversation before about salary. I don't think we want to.
No.
No, we're not having that.
So, but we're fine. And actually, if that fiscal officer came in and we didn't backfill behind Joni and Eli, we would save money. We'd save almost $10,000. Sorry, that's not between who's making what, but I'm just saying, we'd save money if we did that. If we backfilled behind Joni with the fiscal officer, did not backfill behind Tony and Eli, we'd save money. The thing is also, again, the fiscal officer is just doing that. Where we need help to deal with our financial situation, in my opinion, is we need help on the revenue side significantly without turning to the residents. I keep hearing, oh, just raise the taxes for the residents. It's like, no, I don't think that's the right thing for us to do for residents right now. I think we ought to be doing everything we can to find other sources. Like, for example, grants. You've been in the role since December 2020, right? How many new grants have we had come into this village since, or January 2020? How many new grants have we had come in?
New grants?
New grants.
Well, we've gotten additional grants for our road work.
Additional, where? No, we did not get, that road work that was over there,
No.
that was already done beforehand. That was already in hand.
Well, those,
Murray
Rob,
Path
you know
was
as
already-
well as I do, those are the bulk of the grants that we get.
So, Bill, Melissa Taylor, who started the exact same
no,
day
come
you
on,
did, raised $1.5 million. She has raised $1.5 million for Columbia Township in the same time that you've been in the role.
For projects in Columbia Township.
Yes.
Explain to me how we are like Columbia Township.
She's doing all the work on the old Madison Place fireplace, right? There's a whole bunch of areas where she's bringing in more money. I was sitting there talking to Brian, the trustee there, and he's like, she's worth her weight in gold, more than pay for themselves with that kind of
We
stuff.
don't have projects like that.
We actually do, because
do.
Bill is, we've listed, Joe's gone through all the places we're behind on the maintenance standpoint. Sewers, you yourself have been talking about how you're worried, and I agree with you. Where are we in the sewer situation? I don't know. It's a scary concept because
No, but-
we've sunk some serious bucks in some places.
You're
putting in
you're
sewer
right,
sites.
you're right, and there probably is grant money available for sewer work. You're
We
right.
found that from talking to these village administrators. They've
But
gotten grant
if you'll
money for
follow
that.
my
Right,
plan.
can I just interject, because this conversation is going nowhere fast. Can we proceed with the second round of interviews for the administrator? And if you want to go on a parallel path to go looking for a fiscal officer and define all that, have at it. We can do it at the same time. We don't have to stop one to start the
No,
other.
I didn't say,
Well-
I didn't say that we had to.
Well, Bill,
Again, I think,
I'd like to ask you a question, because we've had some conversations that you and Kelly had met. Who was that? Would you like to tell that to the group?
We did
I
meet-
was out of town and I couldn't
Oh,
be
Mike
there.
Camp from Ohio Plan.
Specific names, Bill.
Yeah, okay. The Ohio
Of course,
group.
we shouldn't name specific names.
The
I
Ohio
said
group-
Hamilton County, didn't I?
Say it again.
All I said was Hamilton County. I didn't say anyone's specific names.
If it's a personnel issue where we haven't hired somebody, we don't know if someone who is interviewed for a job.
No, 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 no.
this- yeah,
This is
This is
just-
a representative from the Ohio plan who we
Oh,
get
I'm
our
sorry.
insurance
I
from.
thought you were talking
Yeah.
about somebody who interviewed for a job.
No.
And he came and he gave us a really nice presentation, and this was the brochure that he handed us. And apparently, the Ohio plan, Ohio group, they have all types of services that they offer to members, that would be us, in areas like economic development and resource management, and there's a whole bunch of them here. They're all listed out here.
Right.
And we could explore these as options. And I don't know why, Rob, you want to so narrowly define what a fiscal officer would do when you're so willing to broadly define what a administrator would do.
I've given you the descriptions of village administrators and what they do. And you were part of the discussion in the finance committee when we laid out, here's the things that a village administrator should be doing.
Right.
You were part of that. You helped work on that, and we developed that. And we said, okay, here's the
I know,
top, and we
but you're the one
prioritized
that
that.
kept emphasizing, hey, Bill, don't worry, we're gonna get this guy to really be, much stronger in financial accounting or
And
reporting.
I think we will. Again, I think we will. Let's complete the process. Let's go ahead and
let's
complete the
complete-
process with Randy
okay.
being involved.
Okay, I'm perfectly good with that, but like I said, I would certainly like to get the commitment here that we're going to at least pursue interview. All I'm saying, my God,
I'm not
I'm
gonna,
just saying
if you
about
want to do
wanting
it, you
inter-
do it. I'm not going to go, you know that I have done every bit of this work for the village administrator.
Well, that's a great attitude, Rob. So
But
you're not
'cause-
gonna get your way, so you don't want to participate.
Bill, you don't have to yell in this meeting. So the thing is, you want to sit there and, I've done all the work for this so far. And I've busted my rear end for this kind of stuff. And you've been, I bounce things off, you provide feedback, but I'm the one who's trying, you haven't responded to me about scheduling the second round of interviews. You've
So-
ignored my emails for 2 weeks now.
So I guess, let me just interrupt, so I kind of just see where we're at. Bottom line, we as a council have approved the fiscal administrator position.
No, the village administrator position.
Sorry, the village administrator position. And so, that's what we've approved as a council to move forward with, right? So I think the next step is to continue out that process and start the interviewing process for that role.
Yeah, I would agree with Avi here, and I think both you guys are essentially saying the same thing. Continue on with the process, because that's what the village council had agreed to do. But it seems like Rob and Bill have differing opinions as to what the skills or focus of that administrator should be, which is nothing wrong with that.
No, actually, Ed, we agree. We said those top 3 things every time we met with every interview. No, what we disagree with is, does the person have the skill to do that work? I think is where I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think some of the people we've interviewed could do the work the trend analysis and things like that. I think they're very capable of doing that
So
stuff.
then it sounds like a good idea to bring Randy in to the second round of interviews to get another perspective.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I think it runs, we're nowhere near aligned. Council is not aligned on this at all. We can disagree and still be aligned. And we need to somehow get aligned. So somebody's gonna have to give, and there's gonna have to be some compromise on what the details of the position is, whether we defer doing this till, because we're not aligned. We're nowhere close to being aligned, because I see it in everything. We can disagree and still be aligned, and I think this body's big enough to do it. We just need to get aligned. So
Say more, Randy, just to help me.
well, how do we how do we get to that process? I don't want to sit on a budget deficit. I've never done that in my life. I have no intention of doing that. Now, can this position deliver in 18 months? I don't know if it can. I hope so. Is it necessary to get that level of pay for candidate that we're looking at? Rob, I haven't been involved, I don't know. My hope is that we don't have to do that. My sense is that most of this body would be more comfortable if we was a little bit more modest in the kind of compensations we were offering.
And there's flexibility with that stuff, too.
So
We actually-
but I think that folks would agree to that. I think that the council would agree to this.
We have
And that's
one-
why I wanted to get involved.
Right, we have one of the candidates who's actually said that they are willing to make part of their pay tied to performance, not a fixed amount. They've got to perform at certain levels to be able to get additional pay for it. And I think that's a great idea.
everyone would agree with
I think that's
that.
a great idea. So So I just, I think we ought to be exploring that. That's one of the ones that Bill and I agreed that we should interview, actually, for the second round.
So what I'd like to do is, I would like to communicate a little bit more with all of us. This guy sends an email to this guy, and we triangulate all over the place, because that's been going on, and we need to figure out how to be aligned on this. If we're not aligned, we need to move away from it. I believe that.
What do you mean by
because
move away?
If we're not aligned, we don't do it. We need to get, I think we can, I'm hopeful, I'm positive we can get aligned. We just need to figure out how to do it. And I think we can. I think we're all big enough to do that. You're gonna have to give a little. I'm gonna have to give a little. You're gonna have to give a little.
I'm just concerned overall, when I look at the big picture, when I look at everything. We've made these some big cuts to our services, okay? I think they were necessary. I think that some of them were good decisions. But I personally, as a resident and as a representative of the residents, don't feel comfortable with making cut in service, another huge potential cut in service that we haven't fully vetted or explored yet, and then turning around and adding a high price tag layer of bureaucracy and administration. And that will put us from, a break even into the red, to your point. That's it's not a matter of if this makes sense, it's just, does this make sense now? And by my way of thinking, I have trouble justifying that.
I think, again, we have the memo from Mike Lemon, and there's a lot of other people who are much more experienced in this than we are, in terms of the village administrator can more than pay for themselves. I shared with all you guys before, Jenny Kaminer in Fairfax has delivered $4.75 million of grants for them. These people, and they also, it's not just revenue, it's also cost. They're good at understanding the cost and being able to get costs down. And we need to work on both sides. We need to work on revenue and we need to work on costs.
But don't most grants?
So they're in a better position to be able to do that. They have got experience running other places and they know where the opportunities are. I mean, you and I, Bill, have tried to dig into some of this stuff in the past and it hasn't
We
led to
have,
anything.
but Rob, with all respect, I mean, if you read Mike Lemon's report, I mean, that reads like some Madison Avenue ad for an administrator. Trying to basically pick out of that what would actually work in Mariemont is part of what I'm trying to say here. And this statement of yours that these guys are gonna pay for themselves with a magic wand and come in here and just find savings and money everywhere, that is utter pie in the sky. That's all that is, and you're gambling, what, $150,000 of village money on that gamble. All I'm asking is that basically we just explore a couple other options here before we make that kind of a commitment with taxpayer money. Is that such a big ask?
So you go, you work on that, you draw it up, because you're the one who feels that way, and then we can see. But again, we're gonna continue with the second round. We have made the commitment to go ahead and do the second round of interviewing. We should go ahead and finish that stuff, and we can bring in your stuff as well.
What would that mean when we get to the end of a second round and I
you bring
haven't
your-
had an opportunity?
Well, you bring your stuff in. Again, we need to get, Bill, we've been working on this
Okay,
since
again, we've
June
been working
30th.
on it. What is the urgency? There is no urgency here.
The sooner
If
we
this
can get-
takes us months more, well, I don't understand what the harm is.
The harm is, we're just continuing to get further and further behind. So, again, I do firmly believe,
That's probably not true.
That's.
Yeah, I don't see how you can say that.
Generate revenue.
no, not like that, but we're continuing to delay that. We're continuing to delay
It
that.
makes a lot of sense what you're saying, you really do, but that doesn't make sense. I don't know what the urgency is, and I think what Randy's saying here is that I think we've got some real philosophical, what I see here, I smell philosophical differences as to the idea of whether we need an administrator or don't need an administrator. And for
But we
those-
vetted that out, though,
Yeah,
right?
they went through,
We went through that
As
process.
Marcy pointed out a little earlier, it doesn't hurt to interview, it doesn't hurt to check it out, And I think that's the way so many of the people, this is what I glean anyway, just from what council members seem to be saying. They glean that it's always a good idea to look. I don't think anybody is firmly committed, other than yourself, maybe Avia, to get this village administrator. So if Bill wants an administrator that may have different skills than what you think he should have. I don't see what's wrong with letting him interview those types of
No,
people.
Bill is, help me understand if I'm understanding you wrong or not. Bill wants a fiscal officer, not a village administrator. That's a different thing.
No,
Well, he
I
said
want to
that,
look
like,
at one. I want to
He
look
wants
at
somebody
one.
to do it all.
Well, and so, Ed, so do I.
Again,
So
can
do
I interject here? Because we just keep going back and forth on the same points. But number one, if we're going to continue the interviews for the administrator, that's the first point. I mean, continue this next round
Yeah.
for the 3 people that we've already. The second thing is, Bill, if you want to identify who will do these different functions that we have identified for the administrator in the future, if you say, okay, this will be a fiscal officer, this person will be doing this Ohio plan, the first I'm hearing about it, could do the economic development, that's fine. Put that plan together and present it. But I don't, we've been talking about this for way too long. And to sit there and say, oh, no, we're just talking about it for a while, there are things we are missing opportunities on. One of the things I've brought up in the past, we can't identify projects to go after grants. We talked about this for Recreation Works, the grant that we were going to go for. We don't have anybody, there's no village employees right now who are tasked with the process to identify projects to go after grants.
Could you give us an example of a project that we're missing out on?
I just told it, Recreation Works, there's a grant out there that we need to identify. We need to define the project, whether it's tennis, one of our parks, or one of the swimming pool, that we can put an application in for a grant. Which village employee is tasked with that job at this point?
If you
We
would-
just don't have enough resources.
And we also, like the CDGB funds, we're a year late getting into that. Last year, they gave out $100,000. We're a year late getting into it, so we lost an opportunity.
So again, I don't want to sit here and try to argue, but again, if you can go through that process and
It was
identify
brought up last
the
year.
tasks that we have
Joe brought it up last year.
assigned or developed for an administrator, and you can articulate who will do each of those tasks in the future, I'm more than willing to take a look at it. Is that reasonable?
See, I think we're aligned. I think we're together on. I think we all want, if we would vote tonight whether we get an administrator, everyone would say yes. I mean, I've been very clear. That Vision 2021 plan, one of the first things they said was we need a village administrator. I don't think we agree on what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I think that let's look at these candidates and maybe together, maybe with the 3 of us, we can agree on what it looks like.
And I think you make a good point, because maybe we could have an administrator light, and that some of these other tasks would be assigned to somebody else. But let's figure out who's going to do these tasks in the future, because it's not fair to let the council people have to worry about this stuff. I mean, Bill, you know that I've done a fair amount of work on the pool in the past year.
Sure.
Now, why the council person has to be doing that type of stuff, I don't know.
Because I don't know, Joe, that's how we've always done it. I mean, when you put your hand up and.
No, it just didn't get done. It just didn't get done in the
Sometimes it didn't get
past.
done. You're right.
That's the problem.
So again, let's try to figure out what things we need to have done, and figure out, is it an administrator that does it? Is it a fiscal officer that does it? But in the meantime, I would continue to do the interviews,
Well, if
not to
we
lose
continue
traction on it.
What happens at the end of it? After we've concluded those interviews, then what?
If we decide to go in a different direction, I don't think it's fair to leave those candidates hanging out there at this
No,
point.
that's a good point.
I
We
think
need
you
to
should,
communicate one way or another.
Well, I've communicated to 2 of them, because the 2 that Bill said we'd interview a second time, I've communicated to them we're going to.
Well, then there's no harm in doing that.
Right, and that, again,
No
there's a
harm
third
to,
person,
and
there's a third
including
person I'd like
Randy
to-
on the
to Bring
process.
back into the conversation as well, who I've not communicated to. But I like Randy's, I could go with Randy's idea, because again, I do think it is a village administrator role. It's how you define the role and who's
Thank you.
doing what.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I do think there is agreement, at least within the majority of council, that we need a village administrator role. So I'm fine with Randy's proposal that the 3 of us, Bill, you, me, and Randy, sit down and we can go through that. We can go through the work that was done previously by the Finance Committee, where we laid out all those tasks. And to Joe's point, if you want to sit there and say, well, here's how I might restructure it differently, that's
Right.
fine. Go ahead
Tweak
and
it.
do that. But
Well-
we need to go ahead and sit there and go through this process, and Randy, the 3 of us will sit there and say, okay, what do we want to get out of this role?
Well, one concern I have about the way that the Finance Committee went about that is they kind of said, you've got 30 days to do this, we're going to do 30 days to do this. But, I mean, I don't know that was sufficient time to explore other options. Kelly and Bill, that was on you. Did you feel like you had sufficient time to explore other options and vet them, or do you feel like it wasn't sufficient?
Well,
I'm
and-
not clear on that.
Well, one of the things that we had come across, and I had mentioned with Randy, in the proposal that we'd received from Carrie on the insurance, on the very last page was a list of other services. So I had said to her, tell me more about this, and she put me in touch with a gentleman who runs, it's called Ohio Plan Enterprises. But this was on the last page of the insurance proposal. So I just called him and said, tell us more about this additional list of services. And I'd be happy to get with him and have him come in and explain it to council so that we all can hear it. I mean, we're members of Ohio Plan. And my point is, there's just another resource that, why not ask? Why not find out more? I mean, we're already part of it, so why not gather the information?
If you,
And I'd be happy to line that up to have him come in and do a presentation.
But again, I do think we need to get back to these other three people. And-
Yeah, I'm not
and do
arguing
that,
with
so we
that
can do
at
those
all.
two things in parallel. They don't have to be sequential.
Right. Doesn't have to be either or. Okay.
Okay, so those are the agreed next steps. Randy, Bill, myself, sit down and get together, go through the previous descriptions of what the village administrator role was gonna have, and we'll talk about how we're gonna talk to these last three set of people about going through this and asking specific questions about trend analysis or whatever we wanna do to really try and dig deeper into that part of the thing that you're concerned about.
Well, to Joe's point that he was making over there a second ago, if, let's say we do that, and then are we gonna redefine this guy as administrator light? What is that?
Again, I don't think,
Well, I
Again, I
mean,
think-
he
I
might
think
have had a
if we
point
wanted those
there.
three
Joe, what do you mean by that?
Well, let's say there's a couple of tasks you don't want them to do, and you take that off and slide it over to somebody else.
Okay,
And
and
you
then,
redefine the-
So do you pay them less?
and then we're
Then you-
paying him less?
Well,
Potentially. I mean,
yeah.
Associate,
I mean, I
It's
think,
good luck for
I
them
don't
that
know,
one.
I like administrator light. I want
Yeah,
to go
see,
with Joe's
administrator,
terminology.
I like the idea of it,
But
because
Bill,
we might
I will
be
say
able to-
this, 60 days ago, you told me you weren't real happy with this administrator deal, and you started talking about this fiscal stuff.
Yeah.
So you had time to work on this, and it's now
Oh,
all of a
no,
sudden.
no, Joe, I had time. I've been in the interview here with
Okay.
Rob.
That's why I'm saying we run parallel paths at this point. You've been thinking about this for a while, so I mean, it shouldn't be very hard for you to, kind of outline what you're thinking, and just move on. And again, try to figure out if we have a decent candidate that we think achieves the different things we were looking for as far as the tasks we expect them to perform. I do believe that if we get the right person, that we will see more grant money and will pay for itself in the long run. And I don't think that's a pie in the sky thing. You can look at every other community that does it. The track record's there. And I will say this, what have we done on economic development? We've talked a lot of stuff in the past year and a half, but we really haven't done much.
I mean, we haven't met with Kellogg, right? I mean, Bill, you keep talking about meeting with Kellogg.
Well, no,
right?
I was going to give you an update on the Kellogg thing. I've
So,
recorded.
but you and I agree, we think there's a huge opportunity down in that industrial zone. I think we need help cracking that nut, because it's a difficult nut, as you've said
Yeah,
before in
it's
our
a
interviews,
it's
it's a difficult
extremely
nut.
difficult.
Well,
We
it's-
need help with that.
Besides
don't have the
Kellogg's, is that
resources.
all privately owned
Yes.
down there?
Yeah.
And there's a couple opportunities down there with a couple of the buildings, I will tell you that. I mean, I sense it just looking in, from a distance. It would be nice to meet with the owners of those buildings and find out what's going on. Because they're being underutilized, there's no
Yeah,
question.
there's no
especially that
about
one building down there.
And we have
Storage.
no incentives down there for them to do anything to improve that area. We have nothing down there to sit there and get them to invest in that.
But Joe, you and I have talked about that, and didn't you tell me, or at least my understanding, that you kind of give, someone comes to you with a proposal first, and then you go about putting in place?
It takes a
remember-
multifaceted approach. Number one, you have to start working with the agencies out there, the Hamilton County Development Corps and all the rest of the stuff, and then approach the owner with a plan, working in unison with an agency like the Hamilton County Development, because it's probably going to take some sort of tax abatement, whether it's a state level or local level, because that's what a lot of these businesses are looking for. But we want to try to reposition those assets down there away from the manufacturing that they were built on 60 years ago into more knowledge workers.
Yeah, and I
And-
realize
and-
that. And,
and-
and actually, I mean, I was in some discussion in late 2019, but COVID, just some kind of feelers, okay? But, COVID put a big damper on that.
people are still doing development deals right now. They work
Well,
through
now,
COVID
okay,
and
now,
got
but
there.
it's halfway through 2021.
I think we're just all aligned. I think we're all saying the same thing, that there's opportunities.
And
And just how do we
again,
get it, how do we go
I think
about
if we
it,
get the
right?
right professional, they're gonna understand how to do this stuff and know the right calls to make and establish the right relationships. I know you don't wanna hear about Columbia Township's administrator, but she came to the table with all those connections already. And so that is something that, you know, you build over time, and when you make the phone calls, you get stuff done. And so that's, you know, if we're serious about economic development, we should look for somebody who has the ability to pull this stuff off.
Can I just
And
ask a
It
question?
shouldn't be a council person trying to do it, you know, as a part-time basis.
Can I just ask a question, though? I mean, how many years has that conversation gone on about that land down there? I mean, I'm just asking. You know,
Since,
I mean, it sounds like it's the Mecca that hasn't been realized, or the vein in the mine that hasn't been tapped, but
the discussion is as old as I am.
Well, I
and
just don't
it's
think that
partly
anybody's taken the
because-
time or the energy or had the resources to really go after
Well,
it.
that's some of it.
It's
but
always been on the side. We've always done stuff
it's
on the side.
also an extremely tough nut to get at.
Which is
down
why
there.
you need
That's
somebody with the,
problem.
which is why you need somebody with the connections, like Joe is saying, and the experience to be able to do that. You and I don't have that.
I'm not
I
saying
readily
you-
admit that. And so, we need somebody who has that experience to be able to help us crack that nut. We can't do it ourselves. And that's why we haven't cracked the nut up until now. That's why it's been going on since you were a little guy this tall. So, you know, we need to get that help. We need that help to get this fixed.
And how long are we gonna give this guy?
Person.
Person, sorry.
Yeah, come on.
Person.
So, per ICMA, they need to be in, their commitment on their side is to be in the role for at least 2 years. So I would say, if we can get this person in a reasonable amount of time, by the end of 2023.
So we're gambling like close to $300,000 of taxpayer
It depends on who
money.
it is, depends on who it is. You and I have
Okay.
talked that, there's a person who's willing to sit there and say, hey, I'll make part of my salary tied to performance. And so if they don't perform, they don't get paid as much.
All right, well, we'll certainly run down that option.
Well, and I think there's a comfort level as to knowing that, you know, when you throw a number in the budget and you're like, holy cannoli, look at the size of that number, that we make it known that that's not the do-all and end-all, that depending on what they need, that we control what they get offered,
Oh, yeah.
you know, so
Yeah,
I
that was a
think that I.
placeholder. That's purely placeholder. There was another person who was also, I thought, qualified, who I was not gonna be interviewing, but we could have had that person for a lot less than what I put into the placeholder. Could have cut that in half.
Yeah,
Cut
but
that
I think it's
placeholder in half.
important that people understand that.
Yeah. So,
All right, look, we kind of kicked this horse long enough. We'll take up wherever we'll take up with the interviews.
and with Randy, and let's sit down and do the
With
process that
Randy.
Randy talked about.
Yeah,
Oh, and just want to say that next week, or next meeting, I'll have
Want this.
some type of analysis or report on that, what Joe was asking about for the real estate and or not inheritance, but income tax versus all the other communities. So I think that'll help shed some light on, do we, should we raise taxes or not? Because, compared to other communities, where are we? So
Right, right.
I'll have something next
Yeah.
meeting
Okay.
on that.
Next meeting?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
A lot less than 60 days. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, resolutions. Tony, first one. Raymond Landscape.
All right, to accept bid of Raymond Landscape to grade, seed, and landscape the Murray Path and to authorize contract.
All right, that's your first reading. We'll have the second reading next time.
Next one,
Yes.
to renew current
Hold-
contract for the
this is a
following
res-
kinds.
This is a resolution for the Raymond landscaping bid? I think-
Yes.
Didn't we just talk that all we gotta do is do a quick council approval? We don't have to do a resolution for something like this?
Well, yeah, I went ahead and prepared it.
Because we've got do we have a contract out with him yet? No. So we gotta get the contract out to him, because we want this guy to start September 15th.
Yeah. We'll pass it tonight.
So why do we need to do a resolution? Why can't we just do a council approval of it?
Yeah, what do we gotta do is.
Wait,
Well, because all money's something about,
as long as council approves it, Joe, what I said, was this budgeted for, was this appropriated for at the beginning of the year to spend $65,000 for this landscape?
Was it appropriated for? Yes.
It was,
Because
okay.
in the budget, we talked about the spending for the Murray Path and the receipts.
Then if-
And the
if-
net number in 2021 is $75,000 spending more than receipts because we got $75,000 in the prior year.
Okay.
So in the budget are these amounts, correct, Tony?
Yes.
So all we're just doing is approving the
Just
bid.
approving the particular expenditure of money that's already been appropriated.
Right.
Then you're correct. You don't need the resolution right
I just
now.
want to try to speed this up because we don't want to hold the contractor up.
Yeah, well, I don't think this is a hold up anyway, but go ahead, just do a roll call vote is it okay to spend this 65,000 with Raymond Landscaping? Because it was not budgeted to spend with Raymond Landscaping at the beginning of the year, was it?
The budget included these amounts. It just
But not for
specifically.
Raymond Landscaping.
Exactly.
That's
Okay.
correct.
We're specifically approving the
So
bid
what
for.
you're asking council is to say, you've already approved that we spend money for the landscaping down there. Now we're asking you to give us authority to spend it with Raymond Landscaping to the tune of
Right.
65.
I just don't want to have to wait 3 meetings here because that'll put us way behind on the project.
So what are we gonna do? Just have a,
Just do a roll call
just
vote.
do a roll call on this? Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Mrs. Graves?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
So what are we gonna do with that resolution then? Is that just off?
Just forget about
Let's
it.
forget about it.
Let's take
All
it
right,
out.
thank you.
Okay. All right, the current contract.
All right, to renew current contract for the following kinds of insurance: real and personal property, comprehensive general liability, business automobile, and other coverages, to pay premiums and to declare emergency.
All right, you've heard the first reading. I need a motion and a second to suspend the rules.
So
and allow
moved.
for the- Hold on, and
All right.
allow for the second
I
and
got ahead
third
of myself.
reading. Okay, motion and a second to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Mrs. Graves?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Yes, aye.
All right, may we have the second reading, please?
Yes, to renew current contract for the following kinds of insurance: real and personal property, comprehensive general liability, business automobile, and other coverages, to pay premiums and to declare emergency.
All right, any discussion? We all good with it? We all good?
Good.
All right,
Good.
may we have the third reading, please?
Yes, to renew current contract for the following kinds of insurance: real and personal property, comprehensive general liability, business automobile, and other coverages, to pay premiums and to declare emergency.
All right, I need a motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Mrs. Graves?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
All right, I need a motion and a second to evoke the emergency clause.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Mrs. Graves?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer?
Aye.
Mr. York, all right.
Jeez.
That resolution,
Just keep it moving.
all right, that will be adopted.
All right, next one, to confirm the appointment of Robert Van Stone as interim village zoning officer and to declare emergency.
You still with us,
You
Bob?
sure about that?
All right, we've had the first reading.
Tabled.
Yeah, I need a motion and a second to suspend the rules and allow for the second and third reading.
So moved.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Graves.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right, may we have the second reading, please?
To confirm the appointment of Robert Van Stone as interim village zoning officer and to declare emergency.
All right, I think we've had plenty of discussion on this. I think we all know what we're doing.
Yep.
We know what we're doing.
May we have the third reading?
To confirm the appointment of Robert Van Stone as interim village zoning officer and to declare emergency.
I need a motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second,
Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Graves.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
best part of my night.
Mrs. Rankin.
Yes.
Mr. Stelzer.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right.
Tony, you can just put aye.
All right, I need a motion and a second to evoke the emergency clause.
So moved.
So moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Graves.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right. Bob, you're in.
Yay.
Rusty,
Now.
Rusty's in the club.
Interim.
For the
Interim.
record, I make sure everybody realizes it's at no salary.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you,
That was
Bob.
very
You're
kind.
awesome.
Very nice.
Extremely generous.
Yeah, I did that tomorrow.
Yeah, you might want to rethink it in the morning.
Next one.
All right, last one.
Resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement of cooperation with Hamilton County, Ohio pursuant to provisions of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended and to declare emergency.
All right, we've had the first reading. I need a motion and a second to suspend the rules and allow for a second and third reading.
So moved.
Do I hear a second,
Come on,
please?
come on, Avia.
Second.
Second. Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Graves.
Aye.
Aye.
Stick with us over there. Dr. Lewis.
Dr. Lewis.
Dr. Lewis.
Sorry, I said aye.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
Look, I know it's getting long in the evening. I think we only have,
5 more?
yeah, we only have 5. That's the end of the resolutions. We have one ordinance.
3 readings.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I spoke too soon.
So next reading, second reading, resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement of cooperation with Hamilton County, Ohio pursuant to provisions of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended and to declare emergency.
All right, you've heard the first reading. I need a motion and a second to suspend the rules and allow for the second and third reading.
So moved.
That was the second reading.
It was
Oh, that was the
reading.
second, I'm sorry. I've lost my
Moved
place.
anyhow.
So we have
All right,
discussion.
any discussion?
Bank my move.
I thought,
Any discussion?
didn't we already,
We did, but the contract language changed. This is what
Okay.
Joni sent to us. It had the
Okay.
changes.
Got it.
So
because of the contract language change, even though we already approved it previously, thank you.
There was an email
Rob
in
was
there
kind
about that.
enough to give me those changes. I reviewed them ultra quickly. Didn't see anything in there that I thought was really bad for us. I think Mr. Stelzer looked at them. He didn't see anything that was bad for us either. So I'm comfortable if you go ahead and
Okay.
vote on it.
Thank you.
All right, so can we have the third reading?
Third reading.
Yes, resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement of cooperation with Hamilton County, Ohio pursuant to provisions of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended and to declare emergency.
All right, I need a motion and a second to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
See, this is
Randy
why I
had
was
it.
See,
second.
she tries and it's stolen right away
Faster.
from her.
Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Graves.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye, just messing with you. Sorry.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right, we're down to the last ordinance.
Okay, ordinance amending section 151.04
It's tabled.
It's table. We're not doing it.
That's table.
Table.
Oh, yeah, Jesus, yeah, I'm really,
Tabled.
well, it's getting late.
All right.
I'm trying to hurry us out of here. I need a motion and a second to evoke the emergency clause.
So moved.
What are we doing?
Order emergency.
Revoking.
We already did that.
Do we already do it? Where are we here?
Wait, that's
We're done.
Joni. Joni's the official.
Where are we?
No, we
Are we
just had the
invoking or
third,
not?
we had the third reading to adopt. We need a motion and a second to invoke the
Oh, there
emergency.
you go.
There you go. At least somebody knows what we're doing.
That's all right.
All right, I need a motion and a second to
Kelly
evoke the
moved.
emergency.
I moved.
Moved. Who's got a second?
Obvious got a second.
All right, give it to her anyway. Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Graves.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. Stelzer.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
Now, are we moving on to the last ordinance?
Tabled.
That's table.
It's tabled. So
All right,
no.
One final thing.
Oh, Joe.
No. I made this request to you earlier today.
Okay.
And I would like us to separate more for the next meeting,
Oh,
given the
okay.
fact that
Physically.
we're getting
Yeah, I need
COVID
to wear
counts
masks.
increasing.
Okay.
I mean, I think this is something, I told you that at work, we have gone back to previous COVID protocols, and I don't feel comfortable.
Well, we can bring back the.
We'll bring that
second-
table.
Again, just separate, I don't care how
Yeah.
you do it.
Well,
just
if we do it that way,
request for the
then
next meeting.
everybody can space.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've been advised by my medical personnel to do it, so. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Bang that son of a gun,
Positives
Bill.
and negatives to that. That's for
Very definitely.
Yes.
Could you do that?
I mean, if I was,